You talked about how the market could recover towards the tail end of the year.
Yep.
What investments would you say would do best? Because, clean energy did really well in that recovery, that pandemic recovery.
Yep.
What investments would you look for?
Yeah. Okay. So really simply, the thing that I'm looking for is the same thing I was kind of looking for in 2020. I was looking for, what's falling less, okay? And more importantly, on those up days, when the market jumps up, even if it's in a downward motion market altogether, sometimes you get these big up days. What's going up? So we've had the time frames I'm looking at right now are the 16th of March to the 29th of March, the 19th of April, and this Wednesday, the 4th of May. Those are the bigger up periods that we've had since this downturn, kind of started really in the, early this year. And look at what's doing well there. And what you're seeing doing well, in my opinion, in a generic sense, are companies that have great cash flow, lots of free cash flow, and are super strong names, and have relatively reasonable PE ratios. And they actually have earnings, those type of things. Because oftentimes what you'll see is that, things that got beaten down the most will come up a bunch. But in this particular environment, because there's a lot of uncertainty, I don't think those things that did super well in 2020 that have been beaten down so much this year are going to be our leaders out of this downturn, mainly because they, as a group, clean energy is a good example, which I really like, but it doesn't have massive cash flows. It's still kind of an infancy-ish type investment arena. Oftentimes those companies have very high PE ratios and those types of things. That's more of a later stage. And actually, even in 2020, clean energy was a later stage thing. What really took off at the very beginning, Microsoft and Apple and those types of things that people feel like they can trust, will be the first thing. So if we are going to have a recovery by the end of the year, that's not that far away. I think we'll still be in an early stage of a recovery, and things that are like the Microsofts and Apples of the world that people trust, that have good cash flow, that have relatively reasonable PE ratios, will be the first stage jumps. And if you look at what happened in 2020, it was really not until the summer of 2020 where we started to see things like clean energy take off, and things that had higher PE multiples, because you do get this frothiness. You go back to 2000, it was the same thing. The original move were these big companies that did very well. At the end, it was these companies that didn't even have a product. Bingo.com, which gained from $1 to $9, and crazy stuff like that we saw in that time frame. So I think by the end of this year, you're going to see those type of companies moving, and that's certainly what we've seen moving in this time frame. Semiconductors have done well in those time frames. Big tech stocks have done well in those time frames. Big retailers, Home Depots and Costco's and Targets and Visa has done well in those time frames too. So you kind of look at some of those. Again, all these are pretty good names, pretty good stocks. I think that's where I'd start if I was looking for a recovery towards the end of this year. It's just things that are really, doing well in a financial sense. They can also absorb any, if you're wrong and the recovery doesn't happen when you think, they can absorb more of that. I mentioned this before, but a lot of those big companies, when they come down, it's sort of like pushing a beach ball underwater, right? You're gonna get it, you can keep it down there for a while, but once that thing gets let go, it goes up, woof, and it comes back up to a more normal valuation for a company like that has that kind of growth pattern and those types of things too. So anyway, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'd be looking at, is those type of stocks. That's traditional. I mean, those are the things that go at the beginning of all recoveries. So I happen to like the Kathy Wood investments as a whole, but I think that's more like a 5-year outlook. You buy those things because that's the future. She's buying the future for the most part. And, we've already had a huge run and a massive downturn. There's so much psychological damage. I mean, I don't see the overall investing world jumping into these things that have been beaten down that much right away, because there'll be a lot of uncertainties. There'll be a lot of people that don't believe the recovery is happening. That's certainly what happened in 2020 for the first, from April through July. of that 2020 recovery. Nobody believed it was going up. Everybody kept talking about it's going to come back down, you know. But the things that were going up were these kind of solid things. And then eventually it became the ARC investments. It became the clean energy. It became innovative technology, genomics, you know, you name it, those types of things. And it was really fun. It was a really exciting run at the end of 2020 and the very beginning of 2021. I don't see those things taking off this year. We've certainly seen them move once in a while. You know, one day, woo, big jump, and then they come back down. So there's just not enough belief right yet in the overall scenario to go out and take that kind of risk.
So it's a good time to acquire kind of quality companies at discount in a downturn.
Yep. That's what I'm doing personally. In our model, we're doing it also. You know, at Microsoft and Apple in our model, we've been acquiring those pieces at a time. We're acquiring semiconductors, which I really like, you know, just because I think, I mean, AMD had a 71% increase of their revenue year over year. That's an amazing number to me. And I know that the market is looking forward, still doesn't believe semiconductors will do well because semiconductors tend to cycle, for example. And so, you know, they're still down for the year. But I think the world has changed in the area of semiconductors. It's not just PC sales anymore. It's all kinds of products that I think will continue to have demand for. So, you know, we'll see how that plays out. But, yeah, I think it is a good time to accumulate some of these big names.